I'm Patrick Wirtz with the Walsh Group, as we were introduced as, which is roughly let's see if I actually can get this going. So we're a family-owned and operated company. Phil, actually, before I jump into this, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Phil Nottoli. I'm a data architect with the Walsh Group. I've been there about 12 years, this iteration. And Pat and I work on a lot of projects together, and we're going to talk about one of the projects we worked on together for the past couple of years.
Yeah. So that being said, the Walsh Group is a private, family-owned and operated company. It's been around for about 115 years. It's now in its fourth generation, which oddly enough, everybody tells me that's the generation that fails. So we'll hopefully not have that problem. But that being said, we've only gone up. I've been around for about 15 years, and we've gone from about $50 million worth of revenue back in the early 80s, $800 million when I started 15 years ago, and we surpassed $4 billion last year, looking to double that in the next 5 to 7 years. So we're a company that's progressive, we're risk-taking, and along with that, we like technology. Really, we're managing about 2,800, 2,700 information workers. If you include all the tradesmen, the guys who are actually doing the labor in the field, we're about 5,000 to 7,000, depending upon the season. That being said, we have a lot of seasonal challenges. So as we've kind of gone down the path of the cloud offerings, provisioning, the kind of the same trials and tribulations that I feel like everybody kind of has had in this room, it's about the seasonal workers. So, anything from like that intern type of season over the summer, how do we get 1,000 people, kind of ramping up, or even the tradesmen. We're think about it in terms of seasons. When it's nice weather out, we're able to build in Chicago, which is probably about 5 days a year. Other than that, we're kind of fighting the elements, and that's really kind of what's driving that change in the workforce. Along with that, as we kind of talk about the focus here being really about the mobility suite, it's how do we find all this new data we have? Being a customer of Office 365, we have a lot of different data types and a lot of different methods and mechanisms to get all this data into people's hands. How do we actually get that into their hands, but then do it more securely? And that's really what's kind of been the focus of the EMS licensing for us. So that document collaboration, whether it be from kind of that JV partner who 1 minute is working with us, to the next minute is being competitive against us. So I think with that being said, Phil, your portion of things?
Sure. So before we started with mobility, we obviously had to have some infrastructure in place and something set up. These are kind of the building blocks that we needed to have in place before we started really working on, EMS. A few years back, we went through a Office 365 click-to-run setup, and so we were already in a hybrid environment, and that's where AAD Sync comes into play. We originally started out with DirSync, moved into DirSync 2, and then the product has finally converged into the AAD Sync. So that gives us our hybrid environment, which is in our scenario kind of required for EMS. We are a FIM shop. We've been using FIM since probably early 2010. We've been working with Oxford on our FIM environment probably for about 2.5 years. They've been helping us out with many different areas with that. We are using the Azure MA to backfill some additional information into AAD. The authentication, I know some people talked about this earlier today, about do you do ADFS or do you do password sync? Pros and cons. We're doing a little bit of belts and suspenders. We're doing both. It gives us the availability to integrate with more apps. There are certain apps that only go one way or the other currently right now. And it also provides us, if we do have a problem with ADFS on premises, that we can do that failover. Not an automatic failover, but we can do some type of DR and recover quickly to point people to the cloud. We're also using AD Health. We're using that to monitor our ADFS servers. Eventually, we'll be using that to get a high-level picture of all our all of our domain controllers. So this is kind of the core that we saw that we needed before we actually moved forward with EMS. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today are the self-service password reset. We saw that as the real easy way to get into EMS. It was a kind of like low-hanging fruit. We were already doing self-service password reset inside of FIM, but the rollout was not as widespread as we wanted to. We had some challenges with self-service password reset built into FIM based upon the options that we had available to us to authenticate. So not everyone in the company has texting turned on their cell phone, and that provided a challenge for us. And so we saw that was no longer an obstacle when we looked at the EMS kit. We're also going to talk a little bit about reporting, what kind of information we can get out of there and how that can help drive the way that we continue our rollout and continue determining what the actual business needs are. We're going to talk about the cloud app discovery, my apps for integrating with other sites like Facebook or integrating with UPS, FedEx, that type of thing. We'll talk about RMS and some business cases that we found for there. We'll talk about Entune, MFA, and then where we're going in the future. So like I said earlier, self-service password reset was pretty low-hanging fruit. We figured out that, it does put a good amount of time and money on our help desk, but we really decided that that's not the driving factor for adopting this. What it's really about is business disruption. We have, these people out in the field, and, when they can't get into their account, they can't work. So if they can't work and it takes them, half an hour to coordinate with the help desk, and the help desk, it only takes them a few minutes to do it, we've distracted them for a good amount of time. The end users are already accustomed to this, being able to reset their password and having to go through a few gates to reset their password. They're accustomed to doing it with their banking site. They're accustomed to doing it with their airline, with their credit card. And so it was time for us to move forward and really put this in place. Some of the reporting helped drive where we needed to put other controls in place. The reporting comes out of the hybrid environment that we have AAD set up for. And so as we set up that environment, we started getting this transparency into, where are people trying to hack us? Where are people trying to brute force accounts? Possibly abnormalities of, the same user signed into multiple locations. We started discovering that people are sharing passwords across the enterprise. They're sharing passwords across the enterprise because they feel that it's the path of least resistance rather than actually asking for the correct credentials or the correct rights to do what they need to do their job. So this helped us discover and drive some of the other things that we need to do actually as reactionary. I think Pat's going to talk about the cloud app.
So it's kind of talking about before, Office 365 is in some respects, Microsoft had a great dream here. They had this Office 365, come get all this data, all these new apps and everything like that. And then they had this great EMS suite that comes into play afterwards and says, yeah, you've got all this data, but how do you secure it? How do you know about it? And I think that with EMS, it's told a pretty good story for us. We really, there's no one part of the product that is, boy, I need that. It's definitely a collection of products that make the most difference across the board. So Cloud App Discovery for us was about, I think a couple of times been said here, it's about that rogue discovery app or that rogue file sharing app or something like that. The guy who has a credit card in whatever department goes and buys Dropbox, and all of a sudden we're actually using Dropbox across a corporation without IT knowing. Cloud App Discovery is about, for us, being able to take all that information, not trying to be too big brother about it, but really just trying to coax and coach our users into using the right applications. So for us, being an Office 365 customer, we've made an investment in that. We have OneDrive for Business. How do we get the people to use from Dropbox or Box or whatever type of collaboration product? How do we get them and guide them into the right scenario? And that was really what was driving that. So it's been a great use case for us. It's something that we felt, and we work. Honestly, we've had a pretty good relationship with with the team that works on this, the ISSD team, and they've given us the ability to really provide feedback in real time to them. We kind of back to that Big Brother statement. Originally, it was monitoring all of the traffic that users would have, and we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to know about banking statements or banking type of activity for that end user. We felt that there was a certain amount of personal and business use being used on each laptop. How do we make sure that we're just getting the right information there? And so Cloud Discovery really gave us the ability to go and do that, and then kind of say, here, this is the right solution for you. You don't have to pay any more money out of your budget. This is already an overhead cost. Why don't we try and get to there? From a MyApps perspective, the guys before us were talking about how 50 logins. Now, hopefully we don't have that many in the organization, but I know we have a lot. And I know we have provisioning issues, and I know that we have authentication issues, and so on and so forth. And MyApps, the portion of the EMS suite that really allows for us to take different products. So, for instance, UPS or Amazon Web Services or CW or whatever kind of third-party application, and take that all those credentials, and either if the company has been good enough to work with Microsoft and sort of provide that seamless AAD sync, that's great. Or Microsoft has taken kind of the approach where, we'll do the best effort type of scenario where it's at least the Microsoft behind the scenes is kind of capturing that password and putting it into the box, so that end user is able to remember one password, and the organization is secured in the sense of when that user leaves or comes in or whatever, that they're not having. We IT don't have to worry about how many different accounts do we have to close. So I think that's really important for us. I think it's more simplified for the end user as well. From an Azure RMS perspective, this has been a great use case for us. So, for instance, we have probably about June of last year, we had one of our teams come to us. So, construction, we estimate projects. We come up with what the right bid amount is, and part of that bid amount is going to be driven by our production rates. How fast can we pour concrete? How far can we put the rebar? How fast can we put the rebar in the concrete? Those sorts of things, and they're very proprietary. The fact of how fast we can do that drives our cost, how much extra cost we can put into that bid as well. And if that information gets out to anybody else in the industry, that puts us at a severe disadvantage. We really have to be careful with that. And so as a result, we got to make sure that we keep that in kind of that locked box. The flip side of that is if we keep that locked up, our estimators, well, they don't really have any of this valuable information to them. They're slowed down with their estimate, and as a result, if they're kind of bottlenecked to that chief estimator, that top guy who has all information, that means we can't estimate as quickly. That means we can't get as many jobs. It means we're not as profitable, so on and so forth. So really, with the RMS perspective, we were able to let our accounting department go in, grab all this information out of our ERP, put it into Excel, put RMS on it to it, and now give that to the end user so that they can actually look at that production data in real time as they're going through their estimate. And at the same time, we're able to say, you know what, you're only allowed to get to that data as long as you can. Now, I will say, kind of to quote Mark Riley from yesterday, that really RMS isn't the be-all and end-all. I can still take a picture of the screen. I can still write something down. It's that gentle reminder to everybody that this is very secure data and that we want to be mindful of that. So I think that was, I liked how Mark said that, because really that is part of it as well. But I think that it really allows for us to be much more flexible in the data that we're actually distributing to our end users. With Entune, this is kind of about twofold. This is about the proliferation of devices that I know everybody has had. I mean, I know we have it. I'm sure everybody else in this division, in this room has had it. And how do we manage, how do we secure, and how do we distribute? And it's been a great story for us as it's kind of gone forward. The initial kind of forays in Entune were good. We were not an early adopter. We've only been on Entune as of the EMS suite. Kind of back to that whole, for us, it's been about the entire package that's really been important. So with Entune, we look at it as, up until now, we had Exchange ActiveSync. That was a good enough. That was, we could take all the corporate devices, manage them, wipe them if they get lost, but that was pretty much about it. As we kind of went down back to that Office 365 route, well, now all of a sudden we had PowerPoint and SharePoint and all of these and OneDrive and the ability to put all of this different information on your corporate device or your personal device. So to be able to really target those apps became important. To be able to take those BYOD type of devices and manage them to a level that was comfortable for both the organization as well as the end user was important as well. And EAS was no longer the solution. Along with that, one of the constant complaints that I hear from our end users is, we've got all this great technology. Why don't I know what we have? And I feel like that's a good point. If I'm able to give you one app, that corporate store that comes with Entune, and say, you know what, go download Word, go download OneDrive for Business, go download whatever new application is either from the iTunes store or in our case, actually a custom developed app that we're distributing with it is a directory app. It really allowed for that flexibility to give people what they needed to guide them in the direction that they needed in order to be able to be more successful and as a result, more productive. I mean, the more that a guy is on the job site and wandering that job site is important to us, because if he's in the office and he's looking at plans and it's sort of a, let me get the paper, run back in, run back out type of scenario, that doesn't do us any good. If you look at a OneDrive for Business type of app that's managed by Entune, that puts us in a much better scenario. So kind of back to that first slide that Phil was talking about with the reporting. MFA is becoming more important, I think, everybody here as well, too. I feel like this is something that is almost a must-have. It's no longer just okay, we need to be more secure type of thing. So we're a private company. We're not governed by a lot of different rules and regulations and whatnot. We have some issues with the government when we do government contracts, but overall, that's not about what we're really focused on. But MFA with our users, so we're having phishing attacks and people are password sharing. And no matter how much you kind of fight that, it's still going to happen. MFA at least allows for that one extra layer, allows for us to kind of mitigate the different scenarios that could come into play and really helps us be more secure as an organization. And I feel like it's doing it in a way that's not too unbearable to the end user. So for instance, MFA can be used in the scenario where it's IP specific. If you're on a corporate network, you're not going to get prompted for that MFA. If you're outside the corporate network, if you're on your home computer, we want to be able to give you that same type of information, that same accessibility, but we need to do it in a more secure fashion. And I feel like we're finding the right balance between the two of being secure, while at the same time not making the process too arduous to our end users. Going forward, I kind of mentioned a little bit before that we've had a lot of success working with the team that works on EMS, the ISSD team, and I feel like we've had the great opportunity there. And so as a result, we've worked on a couple of new portions of their portfolio as well. So the B2B, B2C, that one's going to be really big for us as a corporation. It used to be that Walsh Construction would go out, bid a job, build the job. Well, now all of a sudden we're finding these huge mega jobs. We've gone from that $800 million type of was our entire revenue to, well, two of our jobs are $2 billion in that range. So how do we build those? Well, we have to build them with partners because nobody wants to take that amount of risk. And again, like I was saying, that partner on one job could easily be competing against us on another job. How do we securely get them and all of their credentials into our systems with only access to the data that we need? And that's really what the B2B, B2C type of scenario is for us. So the B2B is kind of the Walsh Construction to the equivalent. So for in our world, it's a DPR construction, and we're matching. And the flip side of that, we also deal with a lot of mom and pop type shops. So just the one-off, we need them in our system for a couple of days. They're probably only about 3 or 4 people. How do we get them? And that's where the B2C kind of comes in for us as well. Those kinds of programs are great for us to try and help us work with Microsoft to figure out what's the right level, risk, setup, so on and so forth. With Pim and Pam, that's sounds like 2 sisters, but anyway, that's really the story there is about our own internal IT scenario. How do we get all of these guys? When I started, it was 4 guys and the intern. I was the intern. Now all of a sudden, we're roughly 50 people, and we need to give people the right amount of access. We're trying to find the point in time, really the Pim and the Pam type of story to get that scenario into play as well. We want to be able to give the junior admins the ability to manage different systems, but at the same time, we only want them to do it during the certain times of day and with some audit trail. That protects them as much as it does the company as well. For Azure administrative units, kind of back to that protection scenario, kind of our top-level execs, or even people that work with the government contracts. Those are important accounts that not everybody in the organization should have access to. And as a result, we need to be mindful of that. And so AAUs, being similar to OUs within the Active Directory world, really help us accomplish that. Kind of wall off, put the people in the right scenarios, put the people in the right zones so that everybody's kind of in a good spot. So Cloud App Discovery, we were talking about it in terms of finding the actual different uses that people are having for their programs and whatnot. The one thing the team is working on, which again kind of relates back to the security aspect of it, are the anomalous processes. So, I'm John Smith, and 5 days a week I'm opening 5 programs, and I'm using the same 5 things all the time, and all of a sudden, week 2 or week 3 comes around, and I add the 11th or the 12th. This kind of program running on your machine is going to be able to detect that, and all of a sudden say, maybe this isn't the right thing. This is cause for pause. Let's look into the issue a little bit more and find out. So it protects us. It's no longer just like an antivirus type of scenario. It's more of a real-time type of learning. It really is machine learning when it comes down to it, helping us protect everybody a little bit better. And then the AD Health, there was an asterisk, and we were kind of going through that in the slides. And that's because that's, I believe, just in private preview tomorrow, or public preview tomorrow. I think Alex Simons was saying this morning. And that's, that's installing an agent, our ADFS servers. Because for as much as Microsoft is monitoring the cloud and whatnot, well, when we're kind of in this hybrid scenario, how do we know that we are as healthy as Microsoft is so that our users can authenticate and log into the systems? And that's really where that program is coming into play, is it's not only about the ADFS health in our case, but it's also eventually about the Active Directory health as well. So all these pieces of the puzzle add up to a pretty nice equation for Microsoft, and for Walsh for that matter. And I think we were going to kind of show a little bit about do a quick demo here for you.
What do we want to demo? MFA?
Yes.
Or RMS? So as I said earlier, we are in a hybrid environment for email. And so you can see that as I'm logging in here, that I'm actually logging into a server that's on premises for email. And my account is actually in the cloud. It's in O365 Exchange Online. So it's going to tell me that I need to go there. We have a little bit more than half, if not 3/4 of the company moving, I think, to Exchange Online.
Actually, I think we're roughly about 80-85% right now.
Okay.
Meeting about that next week to confirm.
Okay, excellent. So here is where MFA would come into play. So this is redirected me to our ADFS site. And since I'm going to be logging in from an unknown computer here, it's going to say that I'm going to need to provide a second level of authentication. So I actually already have the app set up on my phone for multi-factor authentication. And if you guys have used multi-factor authentication from like Google Authenticator or something like that, you'll notice that this works slightly different. Most of those apps require you to use a code. The difference that we actually have here is that they can actually prompt you to verify. So rather than actually having to retype the code, and this is the part that we feel that is a competitive advantage that actually allows it not to be too intrusive on the end user. For the user to have to rekey things in, even though it's something pretty simple, all those things add up. So I just hit the verify button there, and if we go back to the podium, we say I didn't do it quick enough.
Philip, can you explain why you're choosing to use code instead of just a phone call?
I chose to set it up on my my account that way, just as that was my preference.
Okay. So you let your users make that choice?
We are going to be letting the user make the choice to some degree. For me, I typically have my phone, like many of us, right there in my pocket, and I would prefer to actually just hit the button rather than actually get the phone call. But
Hey, what's that bad market news from Chris May? So word leaks out that highly anticipated presentation about the enterprise Entune deployment by Microsoft Gold partner Oxford is discovered to lead to a failed deployment, and the market plummets. Huh. Well, anyway, don't pay attention to that one, guys. We have a guy on our team who loves to give us a hard time, if you couldn't tell, so we thought we'd share it with everyone.
he knew we were going into this presentation,
Yeah.
and he decided to poke us a little. We also did have the company portal. I don't know if, probably only a few of you attended the session that Mark Riley had the other day. I think he's going to be having another session talking about the company portal. But my device is actually managed by Entune. And so this is kind of what the interface looks like when your device is managed by Entune. And we've pushed down this app right here called Walsh Directory. The future is pushing down the rest of the apps. And
Yeah, make it a little bit easier on end users. So, mind switching back?
sure.
Oh, no, I think we need to.
Close that.
So that all being said, our presentation is done.